Bury the log and the copper plate in the same hole. Apply water once and leave. After a few weeks, the wood will begin to absorb moisture from everywhere, like a sponge. Bacteria attack the rotting wood and will release electrons directly into the soil. The copper will react with the minerals and create permanent stress underground. The roots will grow towards the current source. Nutrients locked in the soil will be released and made available to plants. The system will work for years without batteries, fertilizers, or electricity bills. This science has been documented since 1841. The ancient Amazonian civilization created soil that bears fruit for 2,000 years without chemicals. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, scientists have discovered patches of land as black as ink. Locals call it Terra Preta de Indio, the dark land of the Indians. This soil should not exist in nature. The natural soil of the Amazon is thin, acidic, and nutrient-poor. Tropical heat decomposes organic matter so quickly that nothing accumulates. It is almost impossible to grow crops for more than one season. However, here, among the worst arable land on the planet, there are plots so fertile that they produce crops for more than 2,000 years. The fertile layer reaches 2 meters in depth. It contains 3 to 18 times more carbon than the surrounding forest floor. Villagers still mine this soil and sell it as premium soil in Brazilian markets. For decades, scientists have debated whether this phenomenon is natural or man-made. Archaeologists then found pottery shards, fish bones, and unmistakable traces of deliberately produced charcoal throughout the soil. The indigenous Amazonians created it specifically. They heated wood in pits with low oxygen content, driving out volatile oils and producing charcoal. Not ash, but coal, a stable, porous, carbon-rich substance that we now call biochar. In Germany and Eastern Europe, farmers have been burying wood under their garden beds for centuries. They called it Hugelkultur, which translates to hill culture. The technique was popularized by the Austrian farmer Sepp Holzer, who built such beds at alpine heights, where most people considered farming impossible. But the practice itself is much older. Farmers throughout Central and Eastern Europe have been doing this for generations without a name or instructions, just by observing. Bury the wood and see what grows. The method is simple to the point of genius. Dig a trench or stack the logs on the ground. Place branches, leaves, and compost on top. Cover everything with soil and plant directly into it. Hills can be built with a height of 60 centimeters to 2 meters. Important note regarding wood selection. Use untreated hardwoods, fruit trees, maple, oak, birch, or alder. Never use pressure-treated lumber, which contains arsenic and copper compounds that poison the soil. Avoid painted or varnished wood for the same reason. Stay away from black walnut, which produces a chemical called juglone that kills most garden plants. Cedar and redwood decompose extremely slowly and can slow down the entire process. Buried wood begins to decompose and absorbs water like a sponge. A single buried log can hold several times its own weight in water. During times of drought, this stored moisture seeps back into the surrounding soil, keeping roots hydrated without a single drip from the hose. The greater the mass of wood, the more water it stores. Experienced gardeners who build their beds high enough report that after the second year they completely stop needing watering. Imagine what this means. A garden bed that waters itself using only stored rainwater. No drip lines, no timers, no water bills, just wood, gravity, and patience. In arid climates like Southern California, gardeners use the opposite technique, burying the wood underground instead of elevated, with the same results. But moisture is just the beginning. The decomposition process generates heat. Billions of microorganisms working inside rotting wood produce thermal energy as a byproduct of digestion. The temperature inside a decomposing hugelkultur bed can be several degrees warmer than the surrounding ground. The planting season begins weeks earlier because the soil warms up from the surface. Frost-sensitive crops survive longer in the fall. In 2024, a team at Northwestern University published research on a device they called a mud fuel cell. It was about the size of a pocketbook and worked by collecting electrons released by bacteria as they digested organic material in the soil. The same types of bacteria that colonize your buried wood. The same process of decomposition that feeds every hugelkultur bed ever built. The researchers tested it in wet and dry conditions. It worked in both cases and the numbers were astounding. The fuel cell generated 68 times more energy than was required to operate the built-in sensors and wireless data transmission. The lead engineer said that as long as there is organic carbon in the soil for microbial breakdown, the fuel cell could potentially last forever. Soil microbial fuel cells have been around for more than a century. The first was demonstrated in 1911, but the Northwestern University team was the first to make it work reliably in real street conditions. Read this result again. As long as there is organic carbon in the soil. What is a buried log? Organic carbon. What do bacteria do when they decompose it? Electrons are released. Your buried wood doesn't just hold water and generate heat, it also generates electrical current through microbial activity. In 1841, a Scottish watchmaker named Alexander Bain took a plate of zinc and a plate of copper, buried them about a meter apart in damp soil, and connected them with wire. The soil produced approximately 1 volt of direct current. Zinc is more reactive than copper. When both metals are in an environment containing dissolved ions, the zinc begins to lose electrons. These electrons want to reach the copper. If 2 plates are connected by a wire above ground, the electrons take the easy path, flowing through the wire and producing a useful current. Underground, moist soil transfers charged ions between the plates, completing a circuit. Soil doesn't just hold metals in place, it's an active participant in the reaction. Every dissolved mineral, every trace of salt, every organic acid in groundwater becomes part of the electrolyte. Bain used this current to power the world's first electric clock. His British patent number 8763 covers every detail. The device operated for months without winding, without refueling, without maintenance, only a quiet current drawn from the chemistry of the earth under its feet. Within a few years, telegraph companies throughout Britain adopted the same principle. They buried copper and zinc plates under relay stations and used the soil as a return conductor for electrical signals. The grounding method cut the cost of laying telegraph wires in half by reducing the amount of copper needed. Stations along the Edinburgh-Glasgow Railway ran on current drawn from the ground. Engineers have documented that aligning the plates north-south with the Earth's natural telluric currents increases power. Hammering the zinc plate deeper than the copper plate further increased the voltage. Moist soil worked best. The dry ground killed the current. But when conditions were right, these earthen batteries operated for months without supervision. The Earth was alive with electricity, and Victorian engineers quietly used it to connect the empire. But here is the detail that was supposed to launch the agricultural revolution, and never did. Telegraph operators and local farmers noticed that the grass growing directly above the buried plates was different. Darker, thicker, higher, not just a little, so noticeable that it could be noticed from afar. The Yorkshire station master pointed to a lush green strip running straight along the buried return line. The grass on either side was common and pale, but above the copper and zinc the vegetation looked as if it belonged to a different climate. A caretaker in Essex joked that the grass knows where the wires are. The pattern was repeated throughout England and Scotland along muddy embankments and country roads wherever current flowed between 2 buried metals. No one published an article, no one sent a researcher. A Kentucky farmer named Stubblefield took the earth battery further than anyone could have imagined. In 1898, he patented an electrolytic coil made of copper and iron wire wound around an iron core and buried in moist soil. The patent office called it a battery. Stubblefield called it a receiver, insisting that the device intercepted electrical energy already flowing through the earth. He used the current to power arc lamps on his farm, which burned 24 hours a day without stopping. His son Bernard testified that the lamps were hung on trees with spools buried near the roots, and they never went out. Neighbors could see the glow from the road. There were no wires. Stubblefield's farm was many kilometers from the nearest electrical grid. He also used current to transmit human voice wirelessly through the earth. On Christmas Eve, 1901, a group of children in his house heard Santa Claus speaking through a receiver without wires and without a conventional power source. Think about what year it's been. Marconi would not send a simple click across the Atlantic until December of that year. Stubblefield was already transmitting pure human speech. 1,000 residents of Murray, Kentucky, witnessed a public demonstration in the town square. He showed it in Washington on the Potomac River. You have 3 technologies, each independently discovered, each documented, each buried in history. Wood, which holds water, generates heat and powers a living electrical current through microbial decomposition. Charcoal, which rearranges soil chemistry, attracts and holds nutrients with an electrical charge and lasts for centuries without decomposing. Copper and zinc, which create a constant galvanic voltage, mobilize locked nutrients through electrolysis and attract roots to current through a documented biological reaction called electrotropism. 3 systems, 3 forms of energy, all buried, all free. The critical idea is that they are not just compatible, they are synergistic. Each makes the other 2 work better. Biochar increases the electrical conductivity of the soil, which enhances the galvanic reaction. The galvanic current mobilizes nutrients which the biochar catches and retains. Decaying wood feeds organic carbon into microbes that generate biological electricity and gives these microbes a permanent home. The water stored in the wood keeps the soil moist, which keeps the voltaic cell and microbial fuel cell running. Remove any element, the system works. Combine all 3, and you get something that gets stronger over time instead of depleting. Timeline tells the story. Fritz Haber and Karl Bosch mastered the industrial production of ammonia in 1909. By 1913, the first plant was operating in Germany. What once required years of crop rotation or tons of manure could now be delivered in a bag of white crystals. American farmers spent $300 million on synthetic fertilizers in 1945. By 1975, this figure had exceeded $3 billion, a tenfold increase in 1 generation. The business model was elegant and brutal. Fertilizers are running out. You buy more next spring. Every acre, every season is another count. A permanent solution buried in the ground, a one-time cost with no recurring revenue, had no place in this economy. It wasn't that earth batteries and biochar were refuted. They became economically irrelevant due to a system built on repeat purchases. The documentary trail proves this. The British Electroculture Committee, set up at the Ministry of Agriculture in 1918, spent almost 2 decades collecting field data. Their reports documented significant increases in yield from electrical methods. Physicists, biologists, electrical engineers, and Nobel laureates served on the committee. Their qualifications were impeccable. Then, in 1936, the same year industrial fertilizers swept Europe, every report was marked "not for publication" and sealed in government archives. Now the practical part, the part where you stop looking and start building. I will give you 3 methods from simple to advanced. Each one works separately. Together, they create something that neither of them can do alone. Method 1. A bed with buried wood. Look for dead logs, branches, or untreated lumber. Dig a trench about 60 centimeters deep. Place the largest logs on the bottom. Stack smaller branches on top. Add a layer of leaves, grass clippings, or kitchen scraps for nitrogen. Cover with at least 15 centimeters of soil and plant directly into it. Water well the first season. The wood then does the watering for you. Method 2. Layer of charcoal. Take clean hardwood charcoal, not the kind soaked in lighter fluid from the hardware store, and crush it to the size of gravel. Before burying any biochar, you must charge it. Fresh coal is chemically starved. Its massive surface initially absorbs nutrients from the surrounding soil, temporarily depriving the plant of food. Soak crushed charcoal in compost tea, worm castings, diluted fish emulsion, or diluted urine, 1 part urine to 10 parts water, for a minimum of 48 hours. Method 3. Copper-zinc earth battery. Take a 15-centimeter piece of copper pipe and 1 galvanized nail. 1 pair per plant is the limit. More doesn't mean better. Too much zinc will accumulate in the soil and stress plants, and too much copper can harm earthworms and beneficial microbes. Insert a copper nail into the soil on one side of the plant and a zinc nail on the other, 20 to 30 centimeters apart and 15 centimeters deep. Moisture completes the galvanic circuit. The multimeter should read 0.8 to 1.1 volt. The current mobilizes nutrients locked in chemical bonds through the process of electrolysis. Roots grow towards copper through electrotropism. Zinc slowly corrodes and releases zinc ions, which plants need to produce auxin, the main growth hormone. Without zinc, plants cannot synthesize tryptophan, the amino acid at the heart of auxin synthesis. Zinc is not wasted. It is consumed by the very biology it nourishes. When the zinc nail is visibly rusted and the voltage drops below half a volt, replace it with a fresh one. Track your results. This distinguishes experimentation from wishful thinking. Buy an inexpensive refractometer and take Brix readings on plant leaves every 2 weeks. Brix measures dissolved sugars and solids, a direct indicator of plant health and nutrient density. Now combine them. This is the part that no one else shows you. This is a 3-layer system. Think of it as building a living machine underground. Layer 1, foundation. Dig a trench 60 centimeters deep. Place your largest logs and branches on the bottom of the same rough hardwood we talked about earlier. Pack small sticks and wood chips into the cracks. It's your water reservoir, heat engine, and microbial fuel cell all rolled into one. Layer 2, charcoal zone. On top of the wood, spread a thick layer of charged biochar mixed with compost, 10 to 15 centimeters deep. It is your nutrient magnet, electrical conductor, and permanent microbial habitat. Coal will not decompose. It will outlast wood, copper, and probably the fence around your property. Layer 3, root zone. Cover a layer of coal with 15 to 20 centimeters of your best garden soil. This is where you plant. Insert 1 copper pipe into one side of the root zone and 1 galvanized zinc nail into the other, 20 to 30 centimeters apart. The biochar-enriched soil between them is a superior electrolyte compared to regular soil. More ions, better conductivity, less resistance. The galvanic reaction is stronger and lasts longer. There is a bigger picture. When you bury charcoal, you lock carbon into the ground for centuries. The trees that became this coal extracted carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through photosynthesis. Pyrolysis transforms it into a form so stable that it resists decomposition for thousands of years. Every handful of biochar you bury is atmospheric carbon removed forever and stored underground. The ancient Amazonians didn't just feed their families. They ran the oldest carbon capture program on Earth, and it worked. The proof is still in the ground. Terra preta patches in the Amazon haven't just survived for 2,000 years, they've grown. Scientists confirm that biochar creates such a favorable environment for microorganisms that the microbial community is constantly drawing new organic material into the soil matrix. Fresh leaves fall, microbes colonize them, decompose them, and incorporate carbon into the existing biochar structure. The soil builds itself. It becomes more fertile every year without human intervention. This is the opposite of every farming system used today, where each crop depletes the land and requires another purchase. When you add buried wood under the coal, you feed the system from below while nature feeds it from above. Infinite energy is not a marketing phrase. This is a description of what soil does when you give it the right materials and then don't disturb it. The experiment costs less than $10 in total. A buried log is free, coal costs pennies, copper and zinc are scrap metal from a hardware store. The science has been documented for almost 2 centuries. The evidence has been growing in the Amazon for 2 millennia. The only variable left is you. The fertilizer industry is worth over $200 billion a year. The pesticide market adds another $60 billion. Both depend on you returning each season with an open wallet. One installation that feeds itself, waters itself, heats itself, generates its own electricity and gets stronger every year. The reason it isn't taught in every agricultural program on Earth is not because it doesn't work. The point is that it works too well and too consistently for an economic system built on annual depletion and repeated purchases. The coal that the ancient Amazonians buried before the Roman Empire was still in the ground, still producing food without fertilizer or maintenance. The hugelkultur beds built a decade ago are still moist and fertile without irrigation. Bain's earth battery still produces voltage. The Stubblefield coil still generates current. Physics, chemistry, and biology have never changed. The patents are in the archives. The soil is still in the ground. The only thing that changed was who controlled the conversation about how food should be grown. If this has changed the way you think about what a handful of soil can do, send this to someone who grows plants. The best way to unearth forgotten science is to plant it in every garden outside.